I'm just doing a bit of a general presentation today on assistive technology. In one of our last meetings, we were talking about AFOs. We had a great presentation about ankle foot orthosis, so the leg braces that a lot of people with FSHD use. And I'd mentioned a couple of other pieces of assistive technology that I use, and we thought we'd do a little bit of a presentation. So I'll just get you to go to the next slide there, June. Right, so I think the first thing to think about is what assistive technology is. I think we often default straight to thinking just about wheelchairs when we talk about assistive technology, but it's really anything that the primary purpose is to maintain or improve your functioning and independence, to facilitate participation and enhance overall well-being. And one thing that I think is really important just to think about there is that is actually a really positive definition. So when you're thinking about assistive technology, it's something that is there to help you function better and be more independent. But often when we're talking about assistive technology, when you're talking about assistive technology used by people with disabilities, it has this really negative connotation. So we often talk about people ending up in a wheelchair or becoming wheelchair bound, or having to progress to use a walker or a walking stick, and it's seen really negatively. So I think just from the outset, I would like us all to try to think about assistive technology as this really positive, independence giving opportunity. So anything that we can do, if we can do it a little bit easier, if we can manage our pain and fatigue, and whether or not you have FSHD, we all use assistive technology all of the time. So I guess it's just normalizing that perhaps people with disabilities find particular pieces of assistive technology useful. So yeah, on to the next one, please, June. Right, so there's heaps of different types of assistive technology. We've got aids for daily living, so things like eating utensils, dressing aids, augmentative communication. This is getting really exciting now, things that are out there for people who find communication difficult. And a lot of people with FSHD do actually find speech difficult. So I think it's something that is probably worth keeping in mind, because things like modified typewriters, head pointers, and text to voice software, we often think of voice to text, but there's actually text to voice software as well that can be really useful for people. Computer access aids, so light pointers, modified keyboards, touch screens, and voice to text. Environmental controls, so I'm going to give some examples of these a little bit later. Things like switches for your telephone, TV, or other appliances. And these things can be activated even by eyebrows or breath, which I think is really nifty. Home and workplace modification, so something that actually reduces or removes physical barriers within the home. Prosthetics and orthotics, so we were talking about ankle foot orthosis in our last meeting. And they aren't just for the legs, so you can have supportive braces other parts of your body. Mobility aids, wheelchairs, scooters, crutches, I think we're all fairly familiar with those. Recreational devices, so it's not just for day-to-day work and study and survival. We can use adaptive technology to have fun. There's adaptive controls for video games or sporting equipment. Seating and positioning, really important to manage pain and fatigue through use of assistive technology. Sensory aids for people with vision or hearing impairment as well. So we don't all just fit into one bucket. Some people with FSHD do have vision or hearing impairments as well. So I guess just to see, it's a really broad range that we're talking about when we speak about assistive technology. On to the next one. And like I said before, we need to really change the narrative around assistive technology. So I hear, and this has become really evident to me in the last few weeks, actually, I've had some phone calls from people who are really struggling to maintain their day-to-day life. They feel like If they progress to using a wheelchair or a walker, that they're effectively letting FSHD win. I know when I was diagnosed with FSHD, my neurologist, in his opening sentence about FSHD said to me, about 20% of patients end up in a wheelchair. Do what you can to avoid that. And so I left that room feeling like my worst case scenario was needing a wheelchair. And let me tell you, that couldn't be further from the truth. I use a wheelchair now, and it is the best thing I've ever started to use, because I now don't end up in pain. I'm faster than the rest of my family. I get to skip the lines at theme parks. Wheelchairs are great. They should not be our worst case scenario. Our media, society, messaging is often really ableist. So we see people beating the odds to walk again, and their goal in life is to leave assistive technology behind. And really, you're seen as having lost the battle once you use a wheelchair. So I think we need to switch that all around and reframe it. So when we're speaking within our community, or especially when people are newly diagnosed, FSHD, in my mind, only wins when it stops us from doing the things that we love. So often you can't do things the same way as you did it before, but you can still do it. So to me, and how I frame my life, I beat FSHD every day when I still ride my horse, work, do my job, cook with my children. That to me is how I beat FSHD. So rather than focusing on staying out of the wheelchair, I focus on adapting the things that I can and the changes that FSHD brings to me, and I find workarounds. Assistive technology is not a negative thing. It's a pathway to independence and freedom. So rather than sharing inspirational footage of people not using assistive technology, let's embrace it and show the opportunity that it brings people. And we should view it in the same way as we look at other assistive technology, like glasses. You wouldn't think twice if someone says, oh, my eyesight's going, I got a pair of glasses. But for some reason, if it's the muscles in your legs that's going and you start to use a walker, we feel very differently about that. So just some food for thought. Next one, June. Right, so this is my friend Matthew. He is a father of 4, and up until about 4 years ago, he had all of his limbs and functioned completely able-bodied. He got a sore throat and went to hospital one night and had sepsis and lost all 4 of his limbs overnight. And Matthew, that is sitting next, so that's me in my wheelchair, that's Matthew, he still drives a car, works full-time, parents his 4 children. It does help that he's an engineer, so he's a problem solver by nature. This is the man that changed my perception of assistive technology. So after meeting him, and he laid out in front of me in a picture one day all of the kit that he uses to get through each day. And I thought, goodness, if he can do it, I can do it. So I thought I would just introduce you to Matthew in my talk, because he's a real user of assistive technology. So in terms of my AT, I use a motorized wheelchair with elevating leg rests to recline and elevate function and extended reach function. I have a little travel wheelchair, which is a manual chair with a little joystick add-on. I have a walking stick, and I have ankle foot orthosis that I use as well. So depending what I'm doing, where I'm going, what my plans are, and how much I want to get out of that day, I pick and choose my toolkit to suit. So some days I'm in my motorized chair all day, particularly if I'm navigating uneven terrain or I'm going out and about and I want to last the whole day. But if I'm just popping to the shops, I'll take my walking stick. I may or may not wear my AFOs depending how stubborn I'm feeling that day. And I'll walk with my stick. Next one. In the kitchen, I love me some good kitchen appliances, and I'm lazy by nature. So anything that makes it easier, I find great. So I use a Thermomix cooker. I am part of the Thermomix cult. I find it really helps. It stirs, it chops, and that's been a game changer for me. That is not a disability specific appliance. A lot of people, love to cook in this way. I do also use a food processor as well. And on the right there, I've got a hot water dispenser. So I was finding lifting a kettle really tricky. I started to use a kettle tipper, and I found that really annoying because I still had to fill it up. So I still had to carry my kettle to the sink and fill it up and carry it back, and I was struggling with that. I then got this benchtop hot water dispenser, which carries, I think, nearly 2 liters of water. So my husband just fills it up once a week, and I can still make my tea and coffee independently. So I love that. I use a jar opener. The one little thing with the green handle, that's actually a knife. So I use a roller knife rather than so particularly if I'm cutting like sandwiches or pizza or even softer vegetables, rather than using a knife like a cleaver, I use a roller knife, and I find I have a lot more control over it. And adaptive cutlery, because sometimes your hands get tired. So they're the types of things that I like in the kitchen. Next one. Environmental controls, same thing, lazy person. These are my environmental controls that I have at home. I have everything controlled from my phone. So I have my air conditioning and heating, a lot of smart PowerPoints and fan controls, timers for PowerPoints and things like that. I use a grid app to control all of my lights and things at home, and also a Ring doorbell so I can answer the door and talk to people and tell them I'm going to take a little while to get to the door sometimes. And also helps, checking if a package has been delivered or something like that, so I'm not going to the door to check unnecessarily. I love environmental controls, and I think they're really helpful. Next one. I mean, we all have to work at some point too. Can't all just be fun and games. These are my little arm supports that I mentioned in one of our last meetings. They clip onto the desk. They're called ergo rests, and your forearms sit in them, and you have to sort of move your arms in an arc motion. But I was finding, sitting at my desk, I was getting a lot of headaches. And I mentioned to the occupational therapist that I was getting these headaches and it was really impacting my work. And she watched as I was sitting at the desk and told me that my headaches were being caused by my neck muscles being used to hold my arms up rather than my arms holding my arms up. I didn't believe her, and I thought they looked ridiculous, but they're actually the best piece of assistive technology that I've ever gotten. They've made the most significant impact to my life. I don't think I'd still be able to work at a desk at all without them. So they're my favorite little piece of kit. And I always use an external mouse and keyboard when I'm sitting down to do long periods of work, because I find it really helps take the pressure off, trying to use a laptop. And a supportive chair and a footrest. So the same sort of ergonomic setup that probably most people should use in a home office, but also with the nifty little arm supports. And they can actually clip onto a dining table as well. You don't have to use them just for work. So I know people that use these, sitting down at dining tables, or on the phone, or whatever else you're wanting to do. And remembering to take breaks often and give our body a rest. Next one, June. This is the fun stuff, right? I like to have me some fun. So I'm actually speaking to you right now from our farm. We have a little beef cattle farm in Australia, in Western Queensland. And as you can see, I really like farm life. I've ridden horses since I was about 5 years old. And there was a few years there where I just couldn't ride. And the whole barrier to me riding was that I couldn't get up onto my horse. And actually, funnily enough, we went away on holidays and we were over at Niagara Falls and we went riding, and I joked to the lady and said, "Oh, I can't get on the horse anymore. So, my kids and husband can just go." And she said, "Oh, we can get you up on the horse. We've got a platform." And we were looking at this platform. We went all the way across the country, across the world, and found this platform. And so, as you can see behind me in that photo, my handy husband built me this retaining wall, which sort of doubled in size once I saw what he was building. I said, "Oh, can we make it longer? Because then I can lead the horse all the way up and it'll be easier." It's got a little staircase, but I can actually drive my all-terrain wheelchair all the way around it up to the top of the platform, stand up, and then it is exactly, I mean, it helps when you've got your own horse, but it's exactly the height of my horse's stirrups. So I just put one foot in, he lifts the other leg over. Getting off never looks very, it does look a little bit cumbersome because I kind of just get dragged off and put back into my chair because I'm spent by the time I've ridden. But this to me has been the best thing that we've done at our farm, because I've been riding again now for about 3 years, and it has just, makes my heart happy. So I've got my all-terrain chair there, which you can see I've got on the beach, and then with the love of my life, my little dog Mitzi, she comes around. I have a little basket in the back, and she sits in the basket and comes along with me. And that chair can go in the snow, on the beach, out in the bush. And then on the bottom right, that's me in a sit ski. And I don't know if you have it in Australia, in America, but in Australia here we have a organisation called Disabled Winter Sport Australia, and they have guides and assistive technology that you can use at the snow, and they take you. Those sit skis go on the ski lifts and everything. They're very cool. So I encourage any of you, if you're coming to Australia, message me first and I'll hook you up with one of these, because you go faster in the sit ski than half of the people skiing down the slopes go. They're really amazing. And then the quad bike that you see at the bottom there, that is assistive technology too. If you probably can't really see it, you have to look closely, but this is one I modified myself. Because of my drop foot, I can't change the gears on the quad bike. So I have a really dodgy piece of rope that ties to the gear lever that I pull with my hand to change gears. It's not very safe and it's not ideal, but I can still ride that quad bike. So to me, anything that you can do that keeps you going and makes those minor changes, go for it. And then the bottom left is my other favorite from home. I have a massage chair in my lounge room, and to me that is just as important as my wheelchair, because that's my regeneration after a hard day. So recreational AT is just as important as our day-to-day mobility. That's what I think, you have to feed the soul as well as looking after the body. So next one, June. And then something else to think about: manual versus electronic AT. Something always goes wrong. You need to have a plan B. Things break down. I often prefer, if I'm, journey planning and I can see somewhere has a ramp rather than a lift, because if I know ramps are always going to be there, it might take a bit longer, but lifts often break down. So a manual backup is always a good idea. But this is me stuck in a wheelchair lift out at a work Christmas party. And I said, that's fine, just keep the espresso martinis coming. So if you are stuck in a lift, just ask for a cocktail while you wait. We learn to be patient when we're doing our work around. So that's my tip. And if anyone has any questions about any of the AT, I'm trying to be mindful of time, but I'm happy to have a chat about things that I find useful. But please think of assistive technology as an enabler, not a worst case scenario. Encourage others to use it, and encourage others to make the most of what's available to us. We live in the age of technology, so I think it's great to use it as best we can. And we're always looking to adapt when we have FSHD. Things are always changing, so it's always good to do a quick little reset, and maybe reconsider what's out there that might help you for that next little stage that you need it. And everyone uses assistive technology, not just people with disabilities. So, normalize it and make the most of it.
Ricardo, thank you very, very much, Emma. Wonderful, very inspirational. I love it. I love it. I would like to know if you could tell us how you use your arms braces. Um, in which position do you place your arm on the base? Is it when it is straight over the keyboard, or in this position, this angle?
They actually have a little wind up. They're height adjustable, and they can wind up depending on if you're wanting. You rest your arm on it like that. It like cups under your forearm, and then
Okay.
you move like in an arc. And depending on how high you're wanting your hands to be, you just adjust how high up those the plates go. And yeah, it's
But
really
can you
really adjustable.
can you stretch your arm when you are on? Okay.
Yeah, it's hard to describe, but they've got like two sort of bearings. So it works in an arc one way and an arc the other way. So it kind of, goes like this. And you turn your hand almost in a semicircle. It feels very unnatural when you first start using it, but you get used to moving in that way. Yeah.
Okay. And do you know, are they commercially available, or it was
Yes.
built on? Okay, good. I haven't
No,
seen.
they're commercially. It's called an ergo rest here. Ergo rest. ERGO.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ergo. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
I just see a question there. How do you cope with the asymmetry? I haven't had. You mean the scapular fusion? Is that the question? I haven't had any scapular fusion. I do have a lot of asymmetry. So my right side of my body is my stronger side, and my left side is really weak. And I think most people with FSHD probably find that. I did used to only use an AFO on my left side, but I actually found, because I still had weakness on the right, that I would get very sore in the right hip. So I just use bilateral AFOs now. In terms of the horse riding, I'm really lucky that my left side, that my right side is my strong side, because it does let me get on and off a bit easier, because my left side doesn't have to do very much. I think if it was the opposite, I'd probably have to have my horse trained to just let me on the off side, and that's we'd still find a way. The first time I went riding here, I actually got lowered down from the back of a truck, so I would always find a way to make it work. And I think it does affect your balance a little bit, having that asymmetry, but I think we all just learn to cope with it. Yeah, I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts on that.
Sorry, I think those arm supports, I think that would be really useful also to do your hair. I've been thinking about something like this for quite a while now, and was thinking to build myself some, because I don't think you can get them in Bolivia. But I think it would be really good, like, yeah, for all activities that require you to lift your arms, right?
Yeah.
Just to place them higher, maybe.
Yeah, I'm going to share that information with a lot of people, because so many people report pain, especially in their shoulder, neck area, and people have talked about the headache. And I think they don't make enough if they need to know more about how you can use these ergonomic approaches to reduce that problem. That's really important.